Michelle?
What is your confidence level when David Peterson is starting the game?
We like our chances. He continues to show that he's going to give us a chance to win a baseball game. Guy that has the ability to make big pitches when he needs to, has the ability to slow the game down. He's shown that when he's going against the other team's aces, he matches them up. So it's always a good feeling when he's on the mound.
Jerry?
I guess it's been about a year now since he got back from the surgery and started pitching for you guys. He's about a 3 ERA. How do you think this calendar year, has helped him confidence-wise?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that, whether it's the experience, all the struggles, the ups and downs, getting sent back down to the minor leagues at some point in his career. He's just learning, how to navigate through the tough times, and then healthy, after going through the hip surgery and rehabbing, feeling physically fine, mentally in a good place, and now a guy that knows he belongs here. So there's a lot to like, and I think it comes with experience and game reps.
Mike?
Carlos, do you find it to be a daily challenge for you to try and figure out how to get Juan going?
No, I mean he's gonna get going, and we've seen it. Pretty much seems like every day he's hitting a couple balls hard. Like the results haven't been there, but he's gonna get going. I said it last game here with he didn't hit ball hard, but there was something there. Like whether it was the balance, there was something there that But again, every day I sit here and like you look at the numbers, he's gonna get going here pretty soon.
Felt the need lately to have a conversation with him about anything along those lines, like hey, close?
Not really, because he knows he's in a good place. So, yeah, treat him the same way I treat the other guys too.
Abby?
We know Juan's hit into a lot of bad luck, but at what point, where's the line of delineation between knowing how much of it is luck and how much of it is just not getting results and something that he may need to change or work on?
I mean, as a hitter, the one thing you can control is getting a good pitch, putting a good swing, and hitting the ball hard. After that, you can control where they're playing, how they're positioning. Like, your job as a hitter is to do that. You get a good pitch, you control the strike zone, which he's elite at doing that, and hitting the ball hard, which is elite at doing that too. So there's nothing he just got to stay the course, because if he keeps doing that, the numbers are going to be there at the end of the year.
What's up with Paul Blackburn?
So now that we're going to be playing, 10, 12, so we're going to insert the 6-man rotation, and he's pretty much in play there for the LA series.
Tony?
That was my question. Do you know which game he'll be?
No, not yet, but it'll be one of those games there.
And Senga will have that first game in Colorado then, I guess.
Senga?
Yeah.
I got to check with Hef, but yeah, we're walking through some of those teams.
Howie?
Carlos, with Taylor having played virtually every day since Siri went down, even though you had him last year, have you learned anything about him that might have been unexpected? Has he shown you something, or have you seen anything that is even beyond what you saw last year?
No, other than knowing his role, this is a guy that regardless whether he's playing every day or he's not, he's playing once or twice a week. He knows how to get ready. He knows how to prepare. He's just a pro, So for me, that's the biggest thing. A guy that is the same. He's pretty steady. He's got a really good routine, whether he's like once a week in the lineup or when he's playing every day. So for me, handling that role is more than whatever we see defensively at the plate, things like that. Just continue to develop that routine. And like I said, he's a very professional with the way he goes about his business.
And a lot of guys who have the reputation, whether it's deserved or not, of being, quote, a fourth outfielder, generally seem to show you why when they play more often than they're accustomed to playing. But in Taylor's case, has that changed the equation for him at all? Do you look at him differently now because he's playing every day and flourishing?
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw him as a fourth outfielder because, this is a guy that He's elite at center field or anywhere you put him in the outfield. And then the athleticism, the impact, the speed. So there's a lot to like there that he brings to the table that can help you win a lot of baseball games, So I always see him like an everyday guy, even though he's not in the lineup every day. So it's a luxury to have a type of player like that. And with that type of makeup, it makes my job a lot easier.
Joe.
Manny, when it comes to some of those catches that he makes in center field, we talk about the advanced metrics all the time, but like the expected catch rate, even though he's not out there diving, those catches are sometimes difficult. Does it surprise you how he makes some of those difficult plays look so routine out there?
No, because that's what makes him who he is defensively. His ability to read swings, the jumps are unbelievable. I think he anticipates, where the ball's going to be hit. He's got a pretty good idea what the guy on the mound is doing, how much movement they have. He's reading swings, something that like a shortstop or like a middle infielder will do. He does it from center field. That's what makes him who he is, like I said, because of that. And there's a lot of plays where you might see guys diving for it and he gets the ball a lot easier. And I think it's just the instincts and the way he sees the game from back there.
And then when it comes to hitting the ball hard and some of those metrics offensively, I know Pete went through it. He likes to say just hit the ball hard and then let it work itself out. But in this age where we see defenders positioning themselves differently, there is so much data out there. Does a hitter eventually have to adjust, even if they are hitting the ball hard, if they're not getting those results?
So we're talking in general here,
In general,
right?
yeah.
Not necessarily, Like you said, that's what's so hard to hit in the big leagues because not only there's so much information how I attacked you and the holes that you potentially could have at the plate, but then the defenders are better at this level. The positioning continues to get better. But as far as like, you got to be yourself as a hitter, Like if your strength is controlling the strike zone and getting a good pitch and hitting it hard, you can become all of a sudden a slap hitter, Like you got to be you and continue to stick to that. And that's what I say. When you look around the league, it's not easy to hit at this level because of a lot of things like that.
Manny.
Just Acuna in the 9-hole there. What do you like about him in the lineup? Is this a matter of just getting him some opportunities here?
Yeah, I mean, we got a lefty today. I haven't played him in the past few days because all of the righties. I just felt like today was a good day to get him in the lineup and trying to get him going.
And just if we can go back to Soto, it's been 2-3 months with the team. Well, go back to February spring training. Is there anything you've learned about him as a player or as a teammate that's really stood out to you to this point?
His consistency. Same guy since he was day one when we showed up in Port St. Lucie. Same guy here now where, everybody's like he's struck like he's fine. So just the steadiness, same guy, the way he prepares. He's a grind, he's a competitor, And you see him after games, He's 0 for 4, but if we shook hands, that's all he matters to him. So, again, I haven't seen anything differently from him, and that's what we expected.
Dan.
Alvarez has struggled against lefties this year. What have you seen from him from there, and why tonight would you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily lefty or righty. We saw he was having a hard time against Velo, but I'm going to continue to say we need him, and I'm going to continue to give him chances. Yeah, Louis playing well, but, Alvi is a really good player too. So whether it's lefties, righties, he's going to continue to get opportunities, and he's in there today.
Thank you, Carlos. David will be in shortly. Questions for David? Andy?
David, do you have a personal belief on the runners in scoring position issue generally, that it's statistical randomness, or if there's something about an approach when you have a team that's struggling with that for a period, is there anything that can be done, or is it just one of those things that resolves itself?
Yeah, we talked a little about this the last time I was here as well, and so I'll see if I can be as consistent as possible with how I respond to this. But I think there is a skill in slowing down the moment, and I think there is a skill in handling pressure, and putting yourself in the best frame of mind to succeed in those moments when the intensity is a little higher. Once you do all of that, I think the result is still somewhat random. And there are still smaller sample sizes by nature with runners in scoring position. With that said, we clearly have not been good in that spot over the course of the year, and more recently over the last 10 days, 2 weeks. And so I do think we have to start from the position of, is there something we can control? Is there something we can look at to get better? We're certainly doing that work, that investigation. Our players are extremely aware of this, and sometimes you wonder, is that actually a good thing or a bad thing, to be as aware of this as they all are. So yes, I think performing in high pressure situations is a skill that can be learned and improved over time and with experience. But there are some times that even if you have that skill and are doing everything right, that the results aren't going to follow.
Tony?
Understanding that it's Mendy's job to talk to players on a regular basis, as a front office, is there anything you can do or have done to support Soto during what hasn't been probably an ideal start to his tenure?
Yeah, I think as an organization, and this includes the front office and all of us, we try to stay in regular communication with him. We try to support him as much as possible. He's still helping us win games, and I'm aware that the OPS isn't where he would want it. It's not where we would want it. It's not where our fans would want it. I get that. What I can say is it's not for lack of work behind the scenes. He's working. He's trying. He certainly wants results at a higher level than what we've seen so far. I'm pretty confident we're going to get those. But I also understand it is natural when a player signs a big contract, and this was a really big contract. If the results aren't immediate, there are going to be questions, and there are going to be reactions, and I completely get that. And I think Juan does too.
From your seat, what has been the primary issue?
I honestly don't have a like, this is the issue he needs to fix to get better. I think he's taking pretty good bats. He's controlling the strike zone pretty well. He's hitting the ball on the ground a little bit more than he has in the past. I think that's something he's aware of. And but telling yourself, hey, I need to hit the ball in the air more, doesn't immediately translate to hitting the ball in the air more. Do I think he's trying to do a little bit too much right now? Yeah, I think he's probably trying to do a little bit too much right now. And that is natural for a player who cares about improving.
Laura?
Understanding that Soto is known for that elite plate discipline for you, he's taken so many first pitch strikes. What is the line between patience and uncertainty?
Yeah, so I mean, part of elite plate discipline is swinging at pitches you can do damage on. And that's something we look at with every one of our players, Juan included. Are there at bats where he's let some pitches go where he probably could do some damage? Yeah, I think there probably are. I think as he gets more comfortable in the plate, he'll be able to pull the trigger on those.
Do you feel it's a confidence issue at this point?
I don't. I think there's frustration, sure, but I have not sensed a confidence issue.
Disha?
Hey, David. Last year, Soto grounded into 10 double plays the whole season. This year, he already has 10. Is that alarming to you, or is it a sign that something maybe isn't right?
Look, I think it speaks to, one, he has had a lot of players on base ahead of him, and he's hit a lot of ground balls. And if you have a lot of players on base ahead of you and you're hitting ground balls, it's been well documented. There's probably been some batted ball misfortune in there somewhere. So we've had players on base. We've hit ground balls. He's generally hit those ground balls pretty hard. And if you add that misfortune of hitting them right at other people, it's gonna lead to double plays. So we're a third of the way through the season. He does 10 double plays. I would hammer the under on 30 double plays over the course of the season.
And then you mentioned like he's trying to do too much. Just how hard is it to break out of that cycle, even if he understands that he's doing it?
I don't know. I mean, I've clearly never sat in that seat. None of us has, and it's a very unique position that he's in. What I do know is that there have been players who have come through here, who have gone through other organizations, who have made big changes in their careers, who haven't had the immediate results that they have sought at the front end of those contracts and have turned on to be really, really good players for their teams, including past history here. So I'm very confident that it will. Maybe it'll take a bloop or a couple bloops, or maybe it takes him connecting on one or two to exhale a little bit. But I would imagine it is difficult when the results don't come.
Abby?
How sort of surprising is it to see that this stretch with his OPS so low and grounding into double plays has lasted this long into the season? I mean, you might get that like the first month of the season, but now it's been a third of the season. Is any part of this surprising to you?
Well, I think he had a pretty good first month. I do think he had a pretty good first month or so with us. The surface line was still pretty good, and there was still some batted ball misfortune there. So I think the early performance was pretty good. But this hasn't been a month where he's performed up to the Juan Soto standard that everyone's become accustomed to, and that's a very, very high standard. But players go through ups and downs. Even the best of players go through ups and downs, and it's our job to continue to help them get through that.
Switching gears a bit, Ronnie Mauricio is off to a really good start in AAA, but given that he hasn't played baseball in so long, what do you guys need to see from him in AAA to know that he's back to what he was?
Yeah, he's doing a great job, and number one is health and getting him back and building up the volume, and we're continuing to do that. But anytime you see players consistently hitting lasers all over the field, which is what he's doing right now in AAA, you pay attention. And so we're paying attention, and we'll continue to monitor that and see where it goes.
Is there any sense of like you want to see him struggle a little bit, given how hot of a start he's gotten off to, and see how he responds from that?
I don't know. I tend not to root for players to struggle, but I think we're most focused on him getting the reps under him, getting the volume, hopefully continue to swing a really hot bat, and then once we get to that point, it gives us something to think about.
Howie?
Sorry, David, one more about Juan, but
yeah.
if you accept that at least an ingredient in his slow start is the adjustment process because of the contract, is there value? I know he's missed one game, but is there value in kind of looking for a spot to say, let's take today off, and maybe it is met with an off day before or after, but or can that be counterproductive too? If there are things going on in his head that may be inhibiting him from becoming the player that we know he is.
Yeah, we've had all those conversations, and we don't know. What we do know is we have a player who's really competitive who wants to play. And so taking him and giving him that extra off day, it's not a player who's had a lot of off days historically. We did give him, I guess, the third game of the Pittsburgh series off heading into the off day, so they had back-to-back off days there. I think that's kind of the right time to do this, especially if it matches up against a left-handed pitcher, which I think it did on that third game of the Pittsburgh series. But Juan wants to play, and yeah, he wants to be out there. He wants to compete. He's not shying away from this, and so I think sending him out there more often than not is probably the right thing to do.
Manny?
Just sticking with Soto, sorry. You mentioned conversations that you've had. Have you had to have any conversations with him maybe with the intention of trying to ease some pressure that he might feel or anything like that? And
I think the only thing I can do is continue to support him, and the only thing we can do is continue to support him. I don't know how much pressure that eases, right? Like it's he's going to put the pressure on himself. He's not feeling the pressure because of the things around him. I don't think. I think he's a highly competitive person who expects a lot of himself, who wants to win, and so when he's not performing up to a level he's accustomed to, he's going to put pressure on himself to do that.
And just, I asked this to Mendy before too, just what has stood out to you about him, maybe his relationship with his teammates or his work ethic since he's been here? Just anything that stood out to you about him?
I think he's working pretty hard. I think he cares about winning. I think he's, obviously he knows he's not hitting at the level he wants, and I think he's looking for other ways to impact the game. We've seen him take the extra base. We've seen him look for opportunities to steal. I think especially over the last week to 10 days, we've seen him cut some balls off in the gap before they get to the wall in pretty impressive fashion. So he's working, he's trying. That was certainly his reputation coming in, is that he's a worker, and we've seen that.
Keith?
Brandon Nimmo's been really valuable in his career, getting on base, the top of the order, then the middle of the order, can hit home runs, but it seems like he's kind of stuck in between of what kind of player he is. What is how's he most valuable to you?
I think either, frankly. I think he's proven that he can do either. And either the on-base machine or the power hitter is really valuable, regardless of where they are in the lineup. I think we sometimes maybe ascribe a little bit too much to the massive OBP guy at the top, and maybe a little bit too much to the power guy in the middle. If you have a leadoff hitter like we did with Lindor, who's hitting for a ton of power, that's pretty valuable too. And if you have a guy in the middle of your lineup who's getting on base 42% of the time, that's really valuable too. So I think what we're encouraging Brandon to do is just be the player he wants to be, and not necessarily worry about where in the lineup he is or what the expectations are. He's proven he can do both.
Mike?
David, you mentioned a couple of times of what you look at with runners in scoring position, the type of at-bats, controlling the strike zone, getting ahead, hitting the ball hard, and then there's sort of a randomness to it. It seems that Juan has made a career of that to this point. But his numbers with runners in scoring position are particularly strikingly bad. Are you still seeing that out of him, the good at-bats in those situations, or is there a little something more?
I think he's probably putting a little extra pressure on himself in those situations. I think that's natural. As a team in those situations, we probably don't have quite the same approach that we've had in other situations. I'm not sure it's to the extent that explains the full gap of our production with runners in scoring position versus without runners in scoring position, but there have probably been some circumstances where there have been some very hittable pitches early in counts that we've taken, and then later in counts, there have been some circumstances where we're probably chasing a little bit more than we are when we don't have runners in scoring position. And again, this is pretty natural when you're trying to do too much, when you're having trouble getting runners in. The tendency is, okay, let me get into the at-bat a little bit more. Let's see a few more pitches. That can lead to some early takes that maybe you wish you had back. And then that happens. All of a sudden, you're behind in the count. You really want to make contact and get the guy in or get the guy over, and you expand. And again, I think our players are very aware of this. As I mentioned earlier, maybe even too aware of this. But we have really good hitters. And over the course of the season, I am very confident that our leverage numbers, however you want to define them, are going to normalize and look a lot like what we believe they should look like.
Tim?
What have you thought of Alvarez this season to this point?
I think we have a player who made a very significant swing change in the offseason, who lost all of spring training or almost all of spring training, got off to a late start, and has probably been fighting himself a little bit to this point. I think he hasn't produced at the level he's accustomed to producing. He's working really hard to continue to refine his swing, to get it to a place that he feels really comfortable with. And I think we all would expect that we're going to see better production going forward than what we've seen in his relatively brief stint since he's come off the IL.
Jerry.
David, this is we're kind of broadly about slumping players, not just Juan, but obviously he did not have a bad month last year. Francisco had a great calendar year. I think he's 8 for his last 55. If a player hasn't slumped in a long time, can that make it harder to get out of the slump if he finally slumps?
That's one I have not posited, but that could, sure, like, yeah. I mean, if you haven't experienced a slump in a while, does it feel deeper and tougher to get out of than if you regularly experience slumps? Like I could buy that a little bit. I don't know if that's what's going on here or not. But yeah, well, look, Juan's a very good hitter who has produced at a historically high level throughout his career. That's obviously why he signed the contract he did, and why we're all so excited to have him here. And so this is an unusual stretch for him, and I am sure he feels it as though, and that can lead to natural discomfort and pressure.
Tony.
Just back to Mauricio for a quick sec. I think he has yet to play more than back-to-back nights. What are the actual tangible markers he needs to hit before you would consider activating him?
Yeah, there aren't specific, you need to check this box, you need to check that box. He has now, as you noted, he has now played back-to-back 9 innings. That's important, obviously. I think it's more subjective. Is he comfortable playing the field regularly? Does it look right? Offensively, sure seems like he got himself right pretty quickly, which is very impressive. He certainly has development left in his offensive game, and he's an enormously gifted player. He's likely never going to be the type of guy with Juan Soto type plate discipline, but there are probably some strides he can make there. And so while he's in AAA, we'll encourage him to continue to make those strides while recognizing his gift is that he hits the ball incredibly hard. And we don't want to encourage any approach change that takes away from what his true gift is.
I guess then how much of him being down there is still a product of the physical stuff versus the development stuff, where if he were 100% healthy, he may or may not be up?
So I think it's fair if he were 100% healthy and has had 200 plate appearances already this year, it's a much easier decision. So I think it's both, but I don't have in my mind like he's got to get to this plate appearance threshold before he's an option. And then once we do feel like he's at that spot, it's about, all right, if we're going to bring him here, he's got to play, and how does that work? I mean, we've got some other guys who are swinging the bat pretty well and helping us. We also have some guys who are out of options, and so figuring out exactly what that puzzle looks like is a real part of it.
Roger.
As far as Siri goes, how far along do you see him in terms of, when he's going to be able to come back? And, given the fact that Taylor's been pretty successful, how do you envision roles changing in the outfield?
So in terms of where he is, he's still in his running progression volume buildup. So very difficult for me at this point to really even estimate when he's going to be back. We need to make sure that the running form and the volume are in a place where he's not going to re-injure himself by going out to the outfield and playing baseball. And we're just not at that point yet. And I'm not certain we're all that close to that. So we got a little bit of time. Once he gets on a rehab assignment, gets some volume back under his belt, we can begin to have the discussion about what that looks like from a role perspective and how it fits on the team. But we're not at that point yet, so we're not even having those discussions yet.
Regarding the starting rotation, two guys who are part of the blueprint are coming back from injuries. Where do you see, Minaya and Montas?
So I think both progressing well. Obviously, Frankie out on his rehab assignment. We still have a little ways to go to get him volume up and built up, but that middle segment of June I think is still realistic. I think Sean's behind that in terms of how that fits into our team and our rotation. We'll tackle that when we get there.
And Carlos was explaining that, Blackburn will probably go into the rotation to make it a six-man rotation, one of the games in Los Angeles. Do you think that a six-man rotation is a thing that you might like to stick with the rest of the way?
I don't think we're going to commit to exclusively a six-man rotation for the rest of the way. I think we'll do it when it makes sense within the constructs of our schedule. We'll do it when we have these stretches of 15, 16, 18 games in a row that pop up throughout the course of a season. But I would imagine, as we have done so far this year, we're going to continue to swing back and forth for a little while between 6 and 5, depending on what our schedule looks like, how our guys are feeling. Do they need the extra rest? Do they not need the extra rest? It's an ongoing conversation, and we're probably going to take it turn by turn.
Mike? Laura?
What have you made of maybe some of the uncharacteristic defensive miscues, particularly as it concerns your infield, and how do you rectify that when it is uncharacteristic?
Yeah, I think when it's uncharacteristic, you kind of get back to fundamentals and you work, which our guys are doing. Again, the uncharacteristic miscues that we've made defensively, I think we will clean up. And it's another one of those areas where our players are very aware of this, and I think are working pretty hard to get it right. And look, it's cost us a couple games, and we understand how important every single out is. When you give teams extra outs, generally comes back to bite you.
Are there situations where players are maybe a little bit too aware of some of the issues that are kind of facing the team?
It's always the balance of you can't address something unless you're aware of it. You can't improve in an area unless you understand that area needs improvement. But if we continue to harp on it and talk about it, it leads to pressure, which can lead to reactions that maybe are not the most constructive. So it is a balance. I think our coaches and coaching staff and Mendy do a great job of walking that line, and I'm confident we're gonna get sorted out.
Couple more, Howie?
David, with about 2 months now until the deadline and, roughly a half a dozen teams that don't figure to be contending for anything, do you expect this to be pretty much the normal kind of build-up to the deadline where teams are holding on to their assets to play teams off of each other until virtually the last minute? Or is there anything at all that suggests that things might move a little earlier this year?
I haven't seen anything yet or heard anything yet that makes me suggest that it's going to be an unusually early period. But that can certainly change. If one club decides that they want to engage early, it could spur action. But to this point, it certainly seems that it's looking to be a little bit more of a traditional later in the process type deadline.
In the back?
Thanks. It's probably been about 2 months since we've heard the phrase torpedo bat. But now that there's been a larger sample size, how would you assess the impact that they've had? And do you continue looking at new types of bat construction and see what might be useful?
So I think like any new equipment that comes out, it's helpful to a certain segment of the player population and maybe not helpful to others. And I think this brought to the forefront a really good conversation about bats in general, and the industry as a whole has gone through different variations of bats before with different handles and different types of knobs. So this is not new. It's just it looks strange. Or when it first came out, it looked strange, and the Yankees obviously had 1,000 home runs, and it garnered significant attention, and it was a great story. So clearly players around baseball, certain players are still using it. I think it's likely benefiting players. I think teams are spending more and more time understanding which players it could benefit and trying to target this a little bit more. And I think those types of explorations will continue.
Thank you very much, David.
Thanks, guys.